All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the UK's plan to become a global leader in tokenized securities. We've got a speech here from the UK Economic Secretary to the Treasury, delivered at the Tokenization Summit. And yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff in here.
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting developments for sure. It
Yeah.
really does lay out a bold vision. But, before we get to all the exciting stuff that's happening, let's just make sure that everyone listening is on the same page about what tokenization even means.
Yeah.
So imagine like you've got a concert ticket, a physical concert ticket. It's easy to lose. It's kind of a pain to resell,
Yeah.
kind of clunky. And tokenization is like turning that ticket into a digital asset. It's secure,
Yeah.
easily transferable, impossible to counterfeit because it's tracked on a blockchain.
Okay, so I get the concert ticket analogy, but how does that apply to like stocks or bonds? I mean, those already exist digitally.
Right. But they're still reliant on traditional systems that can be slow, expensive, and prone to errors. So tokenization takes those assets and represents them as digital tokens on a blockchain. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because blockchain transactions are settled in real time, we're talking about the potential for almost instantaneous settlement of trades. So think about how long it takes to settle a stock trade today, sometimes days. With tokenization, that settlement could happen almost instantly because ownership is verified on the blockchain in real time.
Wow, so speed is definitely a plus. But what else is so great about tokenization? What else makes it so revolutionary?
Well, it's not just about speed, it's about efficiency and security too. Tokenization cuts out a lot of the middlemen and paperwork involved in traditional finance. So that means lower costs and less room for error. Plus, blockchain technology is incredibly secure, making it much harder for fraudsters to manipulate the system.
Right. Okay, so it sounds like the UK government is fully on board with this. They're not just dipping their toes in the water here. They're like doing a cannonball into the tokenization pool.
Yeah, that they're definitely making a splash. One of the big things they've done so far is launch the Digital Security Sandbox. And that is a controlled environment where companies can test out new financial products and services using tokenization, all under the watchful eye of regulators.
So it's kind of like a playground for fintech innovators, but with some adult supervision to make sure things don't get too wild.
Exactly. And the UK government is leading by example here. They're actually planning to issue a digital bond using this sandbox. They're calling it Digit.
Wait, so a government-issued digital bond? That's got to be a first, right?
It is. It's a massive signal to the rest of the world that the UK is serious about putting tokenization into practice. It's not just theoretical anymore. It's happening.
This is huge, but why should anyone listening care about a government issuing a digital bond?
Well, think of it this way. Government bonds are traditionally seen as very safe investments. And by issuing one digitally, the UK is potentially making these investments more accessible and more efficient for everyone.
Okay, I see. So while they're doing all this, they're also trying to figure out how all these tokenized assets will be treated legally, right? I mean, tokenization has to fit into the existing financial system somehow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where the UK's broader plans for crypto asset regulation come in. They're trying to create a framework that balances innovation with consumer protection, which is really crucial for building trust in this new landscape.
Right. So they're not trying to stifle innovation. They're trying to create like a safe space for it to flourish.
Precisely. For example, they've decided to regulate stablecoins, which are cryptocurrencies designed to maintain a stable value. But they're not putting them under the same regulations as traditional payment systems just yet.
Stablecoins got it. It seems like they'll play a key role in all of this, especially as more tokenized assets emerge. But what about things like staking? I hear that term thrown around a lot in the crypto world. What's the government's take on that?
Staking's an interesting one. So it's a way for people to earn rewards by helping to secure a blockchain network. And there's been some debate about how staking fits into financial regulations, but the UK government has made it clear that they don't see staking services as investment schemes.
So they're giving it the green light, but within a regulatory framework that protects consumers.
Exactly. And that clarity is really crucial for businesses operating in the staking space. It shows that the UK government is committed to fostering a responsible and sustainable crypto ecosystem.
Okay, so we've got the sandbox where companies can experiment, the government issuing its own digital bond, and regulations on the way for crypto assets,
Right.
including stablecoins and staking. It sounds like a pretty comprehensive approach.
It really is. The UK isn't just dabbling in tokenization, they're going all in, with a clear strategy to become a global hub for this technology.
Okay, so in that article from the Financial Times that you sent me, They mentioned how one company used the sandbox to test a tokenized real estate platform. It got me thinking, if the UK pulls this off, could this spark like a domino effect? Will other countries feel the pressure to catch up?
That's a great question, and one we'll definitely be exploring in more detail later in this deep dive. Because if the UK does manage to create a thriving tokenized ecosystem, I think it could have ripple effects across the globe,
Hmm.
potentially transforming how we all think about assets and investments in the future.
Right.
So yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
definitely. Yeah, I think it's definitely possible that other countries will start to feel the pressure if the UK's tokenization efforts really take off. Nobody wants to be left behind, especially when it comes to finance and technology.
Yeah, I can already picture finance ministers around the world scrambling. Like, wait, the UK is doing what?
Exactly. And you know it makes sense. There are some really compelling reasons why other countries might want to follow the UK's lead. For one thing, tokenization has the potential to significantly reduce the costs and complexities associated with traditional financial transactions, like all that paperwork, the armings of intermediaries, and the waiting periods while trades settle.
So no more obsessively checking your portfolio hoping that trade goes through.
Hopefully not. Tokenization could really streamline the entire process. And think about the implications for smaller investors. It could really democratize finance by lowering barriers to entry, making it easier for them to participate in markets that were previously out of reach.
So it's like opening up the exclusive VIP room to everyone. I like that. But are we just shifting power from Wall Street to Silicon Valley? What are the potential downsides there?
That's a really important question. And you're right. There are always potential downsides to consider with any major shift. Tokenization is no exception. The potential for new power structures to emerge is definitely something we need to be mindful of and something we'll need to watch carefully as this technology evolves.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, but let's go back to the global implications for a second. If other countries do start embracing tokenization, what needs to happen for it to actually work on a global scale? I mean, can you imagine the chaos if every country has its own set of rules for tokenized assets?
You're absolutely right. Regulatory harmonization is going to be absolutely crucial. If we want to see a truly interconnected and efficient global financial system built on tokenization, countries need to work together
Mm.
to establish common standards and regulations.
So it's like trying to build a global highway system. You can't have each country using different lane markings and speed limits.
Exactly. And the good news is, there are already organizations like the Financial Stability Board and the International Organization of Securities Commissions that are working on developing global standards for tokenization. And the UK, by taking the lead and establishing a clear regulatory framework, is in a really strong position to influence those discussions and help drive collaboration.
So they're setting the stage for a more unified approach to tokenization.
I think that's the hope. And the more countries that get on board,
Yeah.
the greater the network effects will be. You know, the internet only became truly powerful once everyone was connected. Tokenization could be similar. The more widespread it becomes, the more efficient and interconnected the global financial system could be.
That makes sense. Okay, so I'm picturing this beautifully interconnected global financial web, all powered by tokenization. But let's be real, there are always going to be skeptics, people who are hesitant about new technology, worried about security risks, or just resistant to change in general. How do we address those concerns and build trust in this system?
You're right. I think education is going to be key. We need to help people understand how tokenization works, what the benefits are, and what steps are being taken to mitigate the risks. Transparency is also really important. The more people understand about this technology, the less intimidating it becomes.
It's like anything new, right? The more familiar we are with it, the less scary it seems.
Exactly. And as we see more real-world use cases emerge, successful examples of tokenization being used to streamline processes and reduce costs and create new opportunities, I think we'll see a gradual shift in perception.
So it's about showcasing the tangible benefits, proving that this isn't just some abstract techie dream. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the potential downsides too, right? What are some of the risks and challenges that we haven't discussed yet?
Of course, it's important to acknowledge that there are always risks associated with any new technology, and tokenization is no exception. Cybersecurity, for example, is a major concern because tokenized assets are stored on blockchain networks. They're vulnerable to hacking and other forms of cyber attacks.
So the security of these networks is absolutely critical.
Absolutely. If a blockchain network is compromised, it could lead to the theft or loss of tokenized assets, which would obviously have a huge impact on investors and the overall market. So it's crucial that companies and governments invest in robust cybersecurity measures to protect these systems.
Right. It's like building a digital fortress to protect these assets. You need to make sure the defenses are impenetrable. What about on the regulatory side? Are there any potential pitfalls there?
Well, one potential challenge is the issue of regulatory arbitrage. As different countries implement their own regulations for tokenization, there's a risk that some companies might try to exploit those differences to their advantage.
So it's like a game of whack-a-mole. As soon as you close one loophole, another one pops up somewhere
Yeah,
else.
you could say that. That's why international cooperation and coordination on regulatory matters is so important. We need to create a level playing field and ensure that everyone is playing by the same rules.
Right. You don't want to create a system where bad actors can just hop from one jurisdiction to another, exploiting weaknesses in the regulations.
Exactly. We need a more cohesive global approach to prevent that.
Okay, so we've talked about cybersecurity and regulatory challenges. Any other potential downsides to consider?
One more thing to think about is the potential impact on traditional financial institutions. If tokenization really takes off, it could disrupt the existing financial system. We might see certain intermediaries become obsolete, potentially leading to job losses in some sectors.
Right, that's a valid concern. It's like the classic dilemma of technological advancement, creating new opportunities, while also potentially displacing existing players in the market.
That's right. But I think it's important to remember that disruption is a natural part of technological progress. Think about the rise of the internet. It led to the decline of some traditional businesses, but it also created countless new opportunities and entire industries that we couldn't have imagined before. Tokenization could have a similar effect, reshaping the financial landscape, but ultimately creating a more efficient and inclusive system.
So it sounds like we're potentially on the verge of a major shift in how we think about and interact with finance.
I think that's a fair assessment. The UK's proactive approach to tokenization could very well be the catalyst for a global transformation, leading us into a new era of finance that's more accessible, transparent, and efficient.
It's certainly an exciting, if not slightly daunting prospect.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that we approach this with both enthusiasm and caution, embracing the potential benefits, while also being mindful of the potential pitfall. Well said. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the global implications to the potential risks. But let's bring this back down to earth for a moment. What does all this mean for the average person? How could tokenization actually impact our daily lives?
That's a great question, and one we'll definitely be getting into after a quick break. Because tokenization isn't just some abstract concept. It has the potential to make our financial lives easier,
Yeah.
more efficient, and more secure in very tangible ways.
All right, so we've talked about all the big picture stuff like, global implications, potential risks, the UK's ambitious plans. But let's bring it back down to earth for a sec. How could tokenization actually change everyday life for someone listening right now?
Well, imagine you want to buy a house. Right now, it's a mountain of paperwork, back and forth with lawyers and banks, weeks or even months of waiting. But in a tokenized world, the property's ownership could be represented as a digital token on a blockchain, meaning the entire transaction could happen much faster, cutting down on all those delays and potential for errors. Okay, so no more waiting anxiously for the bank to clear the funds. I could get used to that. But wouldn't it still require lawyers and all that?
Yeah, potentially. But the key difference is that the process would be much more efficient. You wouldn't be dealing with physical documents and multiple intermediaries. Everything would be tracked and verified digitally on the blockchain, reducing the risk of fraud and making the whole process more transparent.
Okay, so buying a house just got a whole lot easier. What else? Give me another example of how tokenization could impact our listeners' life.
Okay, let's say you're an artist or a musician. Tokenization could allow you to sell digital ownership rights to your work directly to fans, cutting out the record labels and streaming platforms that typically take a big cut of the profits.
Wait, so I could basically create my own little stock market for my art? That's wild. But how would someone actually own a piece of digital art?
Through a token, of course. Each token would represent a unique piece of your work, or a share of ownership. It's like having a digital certificate of authenticity that's permanently recorded on the blockchain.
Okay, my mind is blown. It feels like we're stepping into a whole new world here. But what about the average investor? Someone who maybe doesn't have millions to throw around on art or real estate. How would tokenization benefit them?
That's where fractional ownership comes in. Let's say you've always dreamed of owning a Picasso. But millions of dollars aren't exactly lying around. With tokenization, you could buy a fraction of that Picasso, represented by a token, like pooling your resources with other investors to buy a piece of something you could never afford on your own.
So instead of needing millions to invest in a Picasso, I could buy a small fraction of it through a token. That's incredible. It really does democratize access to these investments that were previously only available to the ultra-wealthy.
Exactly. And remember, all this happens on a blockchain, which means increased transparency and reduced risk of fraud. You can always see exactly who owns what and how the value of your token is fluctuating.
Okay, so we've covered buying a house, investing in art, supporting artists directly. What other areas of our lives could be impacted by tokenization?
Well, think about the sharing economy. Imagine being able to easily rent out your car, your bike, or even your apartment for short periods, all managed through smart contracts on a blockchain.
So it's like Airbnb or Uber, but powered by blockchain.
Exactly. And because everything is tracked and verified on the blockchain, there's less room for disputes or misunderstandings. It could make the entire sharing economy more efficient and trustworthy.
So it seems like the possibilities are pretty much endless. We've talked about finance, art, real estate, the sharing economy. Are there any other areas where tokenization could make a big impact?
Oh, absolutely. Think about supply chains, for example. Tokenization could help track the movement of goods and products from origin to destination. We could see exactly where our food comes from, whether the clothes we buy were produced ethically, and how products are being transported around the world.
That's pretty amazing. It's about more than just money. It's about creating systems that are more efficient, fair, and sustainable.
Exactly. But I think it's important to remember that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
So it all comes down to how we choose to use it.
Precisely. The potential benefits of tokenization are vast, but it's up to us to ensure that it's used in a way that benefits society as a whole. We need to have thoughtful regulations, promote ethical practices, and educate people about this technology and its implications.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important thing to understand is that tokenization isn't just some passing fad. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about value and ownership. And while there are definitely challenges and risks to navigate, the potential benefits are simply too great to ignore. The UK is taking a bold step by embracing this technology, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds in the years to come.
It certainly will. And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back on this moment as the beginning of a new era where digital assets are as commonplace as cash and the possibilities are limitless.
I wouldn't bet against it.
Well, it's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
Likewise.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of tokenization. We hope you found it informative and maybe even a little bit mind-blowing. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.